by the hosts, co-hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions and responsibility of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Genesis Radio, www.genesisradio.com, Genesis Radio's owners, management, or affiliates.
It's another Thoughtful Thursday, and you're on the air with Ron and Romane and Miss Tish. Well, as you can see, the ladies couldn't be with us today. I think they're busy preparing for Father's Day. And with that in mind, I want to send a shout out to all the fathers out there. Father's Day is right around the corner, and if nobody else is acknowledging you, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give a shout out to the fathers because in today's society, the role of fathers has been diminished, at least by society, but you are still vital to your family, to your women, children, and your community. So shout out to the fathers. And on that vein, that's kind of what I want to talk about today. I was watching a news program, and it seems as if women across the board, and I'm talking rich women, middle income women, women who are poor, women who are highly educated, women across the spectrum, social, political, economic, and ethnic. They're all saying the same thing. They're asking one question: where are the eligible men? So I'd like to ask fellas today, gentlemen, do you think that there is this major shortage of eligible men, or is this just, are these women just imagining this, and that there is no real shortage, that maybe the women are just being too picky? So, you see this, right? And we've had conversation with a number of women over the years, and, a lot of women have said, Black women in particular, have said that there's a shortage of eligible men. Well, I guess our focus was really on the Black community, not realizing that it seems that in almost every community, there's a shortage of eligible men. And, there's a number of reasons why that could be. Men for years, up until pretty recent history, men went off to war, women stayed behind. I know that's changed now. There's so many women that are members of the armed forces, but that's relatively new, in terms of world history. But for a long time, it was the men who went off to war. And a lot of times, as the nature of war, a lot of these men would not come back home. And then, young men in particular don't really seem to, I guess, they don't make themselves aware of some of the dangers of the activities they get involved in. Drag racing, motorcycle riding without helmets, and so many other dangerous activities. And then, of course, you have crime, which leads to incarceration or death. And I guess another big one is the rise of the LGBTQ. Let's say it's a movement. And, I don't know if it's the case in the LGBTQ community, if those in the LGBTQ community have the same issue, trying to find suitable mates or companions. So I like to ask the fellas, what do you think? Do you think that there is this major shortage of eligible men, or do you think that a lot of this is imagined by women who are just being too picky? So, TP, what do you think?
Yes, there is a shortage of eligible men, um, because there's just too many single women, and the dating pool is slim,
Mm-hmm.
of quality.
Right.
There's a quantity of men, but the quality is low.
Right.
The numbers of quality is low. So yeah.
So, I guess the key word is eligible, and I'm not just talking about not in a relationship. I'm talking about those who are mentally prepared, psychologically prepared, those who are financially sustainable or able to sustain themselves, and if they're in a relationship, sustain, a partner. So if you just go down that particular list, those things that I just mentioned, that probably thins out the herd a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we have a lot of young men, or men in particular, who aren't too big on maintaining a job. Um, I'm not going to make excuses for anyone. If you're a young man, you should be doing something constructive, period. And, I would not consider hustling a constructive activity.
No, sir.
No, I mean, that leads to two places.
Well, it all depends on what the hustle is.
Well, yeah, I mean, illegal hustle, I get it, right? I mean, there are a lot of young men in general, who are unable to get certain jobs, right? Sometimes you ran into trouble, became a youthful offender, and that's on your record. And we all know how it is. They say that they do not discriminate simply because you have, a felony on your record. But we all know that that application, as soon as you turn your back, it goes into the circular file, right? Now, is that going to change now that we have a former president that has 34 felonies on his record? So, if you, as a felon, convicted felon, can run for president, I don't understand why someone coming home from jail cannot get a job flipping a burger,
Absolutely.
or, a job that pays well and has some benefits, right?
Mm-hmm.
If the law is going to be changed, for one, then it's got to be across the board. But
I would think so.
it should be that way, right? We say, or let me be specific. Mr. Trump said he is the law and order president. He said that he was going to crack down on groups like Black Lives Matter. And what were they doing? They were protesting, which is a legally and constitutionally protected activity.
Mm-hmm.
But he was saying he was going to crack down to restore law and order. Was there some looting, some stores broken into? Sure. But to say you're going to crack down on that sort of activity, but you're surrounded by people like Roger Stone, who got a pardon, the former general, uh, Michael, I can't remember his last name, but he got a pardon. And the list goes on of those in his inner circle that he pardoned. So you can't be the law and order president, but all the people in the circle are criminals. Something just doesn't add up. And now he himself is a convicted felon. But that's kind of getting away from our topic today. Because it's a tough world we live in. And for women, regardless of socioeconomic status, ethnicity, does not matter. And you have so many women that are looking to settle down, and what they're looking for is Mr. Right. Where do you go to find that individual? Years ago, there was a formula. If you're looking for a man, it was a certain place you went. You went to church, you met him at school, or you had the hookup route, right? Somebody, a friend, a family member knew someone and would make the introduction. Well, now things have changed. A lot of people still go to church, but church does not seem to be, um, I guess, as fruitful in terms of forming relationships as it used to be. And it seems that in the black church in particular, um, there's a lot of brothers and sisters in the black church who are also part of the LGBTQ community. So if what you're looking for is a heterosexual relationship, maybe the church is not the place to go anymore. At least not in the sense that it used to be, where you could rely on meeting someone, right? Someone who shared your values, someone who shared your religion. Now, maybe a religion, but not necessarily your values. And then, of course, a lot of women will meet guys in school, high school, sweethearts, college, grad school, or some professional school, law school, medical school. Well, that's the ideal, right? But it doesn't seem to be working out. And for women now, women have left the home, I guess, back in the late 50s, early 60s, when a couple of things happened. The advent of the birth control pill kind of freed women up from constantly being pregnant and stuck at home, saying barefoot and pregnant. Well, that began to change, followed shortly thereafter by the women's movement. Well, women were saying, listen, we are just as capable as our male counterparts. We're just as intelligent. We want to work, we're willing, we're able, and we're going to go out there, regardless of what society says. We're going to change. We're going to change that paradigm. We're not just going to sit at home and be the nursemaid, the housemaid, and take care of a husband and the children, but really deny yourself. So all that changed during that time. So now you find women in every field of endeavor. You find women who have committed themselves to going out and succeeding, reaching that brass ring, achieving the American dream. And then they realize, well, you know what? I've got the home, I've got the bank account, I've got the stocks, the bonds, but I don't have anybody to share with. I have a nice big house and it's just me and maybe a pet, right? And that's great. But I don't know where this idea comes from that a dog is a man's best friend. A dog is certainly not my best friend. And for a woman who is alone and looking for a relationship, that dog is not going to be your best friend for long, right? That dog is not going to keep you warm on a cold night. And that dog is not going to hold you and tell you it's going to be all right when you're having a tough day. So for those women who are looking, right? As men, for Terry and I, of course, those are things we don't focus on, right? Is there this massive shortage, right? No, Keith. Is there this massive shortage of men, right? Is that really what's happening in our country and, in fact, around the world? And if so, I wonder, is this by design? There are and have been people in this country, and in fact, around the world, who said repeatedly that the world is overpopulated and that we need to drastically reduce the Earth's population. Well, down in the state of Georgia, and I forget the town, there's something called the Georgia Guidestones. And on these Guidestones, there are a number of, facts or what some people believe should be. And one of those tenets that you'll find on the Guidestones is to keep the Earth's population below 500 million people. We currently are at somewhere around 8 billion people, and the numbers are expected to go up. So, what those of the mindset that there are too many of us on the planet, well, their belief is we need to drastically reduce those numbers. And that's been tried on many occasions. Within my lifetime, of course, the big one would be the outbreak of HIV. And that goes back over 40 years, back to around 1981, when this new and unknown disease first appeared in this country in the Bay Area on the West Coast. And apparently, at least during that time, it only affected gay men in that area, in the Bay Area. So it was initially called GRIDS, Gay Men Related Infectious Disease Syndrome. Well, over time, it became clear that there were other ways to transmit this virus. Um, the virus got into every bodily fluid, blood, urine, tears, sweat. So, and ways to contract it, it wasn't just sex. It could be intravenous drug use. It could be from a transfusion, as was the case in the late Arthur Ashe. Well, it went from being a virus that affected gay men in the Bay Area. Well, then it began to affect IV drug abusers. And then it crossed over to the heterosexual community. And over time, it spread like wildfire, particularly in places like sub-Saharan Africa, where millions died. Well, that was tried, that experiment, and it was a long experiment. It's still going on. We still do not have a cure for AIDS or HIV. But despite that, population numbers are still increasing. India, 2 billion people, just surpassed China a short time ago. And now the projections are that Africa, within the next few years, will outpace India in terms of population growth. So, for those who think that the world is overpopulated, I think God can count. And I think if the Creator decided that we were too many people on the planet, then I think God will take it into his own hands and slow down the birth rate. But that's not the case. This earth produces enough for everyone. It's just the greedy folks that think they're not getting enough. But, I ask that, I make that statement because there is a shortage, possibly, of men. If that's the case, how do you reproduce? It takes two to make one. And look, I know in today's society, we have a number of gender expressions. Okay. So there have been psychological changes in our thoughts and approach to gay people, queer, and whatever the other letters stand for. But physiologically, it still takes two to make one. There has to be the union of sperm and ovum to produce a child. That has not changed. And let's hope it does not. Let's hope that science will not find a way to alter nature and create a child through some means other than the womb. Let's hope that never happens, because we're already dealing with AI, which is bad enough. If we're going to start mass manufacturing children, who knows what we may produce? But that's another story. I'm just kind of curious as to what men think, because I know a lot of us may say, well, that's just women being picky. There are plenty of guys out on the street, right? Guys at work, guys in college, high school. When we talk about these guys, again, we're talking about eligible men. right? Those that are financially secure, those that, have a job, retired, own a business, those that don't have some of the issues related to previous relationships, sometimes known as baby mama drama. That would kind of make you ineligible for a number of reasons, especially if you have a few baby mamas. So that would kind of knock you out of pool as well. And then you have guys who you have so many incarcerated in this country. We lock up more people in this country than any other major industrialized countries. You can take five of them and combine them, and we still lock up more people. I think we have over 2 million people in this country incarcerated pretty much any given time. So of course that is also going to narrow the pool down. And again, we talked about LGBTQ. So, again, is that part of a larger plan? Or is it that we're just not connecting? And, we live in a technological age where we have smartphones and we have tablets and we have laptops. So a lot of people decide that they're going to go the dating app route and kind of allow technology to pick someone for them. And I guess there's so many parameters that are supposed to match up before I guess a match is made between two people. But is that enough? It's one thing to write, to go on a computer and say, you want this, you want A, B, and C, and they find somebody who kind of closely matches that. But when you meet that person, there has to be some kind of chemistry, some kind of spark, some sort of attraction, right? And if it's not there, well, you're right back to the drawing board. You're right back at that computer, typing in the same information you typed in before and hoping for a better result, which is not guaranteed. But I'm just kind of curious, from a male standpoint, and TP kind of said that he does believe that there is a shortage, and you know what, I'm inclined to believe that as well, that there is a shortage. How bad? I don't know. Um, Apparently, from what I hear from a number of women, situation is critical. For women who are of childbearing age or getting to that point where um, bearing a child can become more risky, right? Um, Typically, any woman over the age of 35 is considered to be high risk. So you have women who have, say, finished their bachelor's, master's, and maybe they want to go to medical school or law school. They've graduated and now have entered the workplace, and they're right about, say, 35, 34, 35. And now's the time they want to settle down and find that individual that is going to be a life partner and start a family. Well, financially or secure, you're just finding that partner to make, to create, I guess, form this union, right? I think that's a good term. Form a union. And also, you want to pretty quickly uh, get pregnant. Start right away to making some babies, at least one, right? Before things start to slow down, um, and before you reach that point where it is extremely dangerous. Well, I won't say extremely dangerous, but more risky to have a child, right? I know women in this country, some in their 40s, late 40s, early 50s, are having children. And, these women took care of themselves, exercised, ate right. So for them, for some, it may seem like a miracle. For them, it's like, no, You take care of yourself, you take care of your body will take care of you. But that seems to be the situation. And, I saw this on a news show, right? So there seems to be a, a situation for a lot of women in this country. And, it's something that I guess is almost unheard of. In this country, we always consider that, always be somebody, when you're ready to settle down, there's always be somebody you can meet, somebody who wants to settle down, in committed relationships, somebody wants to get married. But now we live in a different world. Our concepts have changed so much. Our concept as it relates to relationships, definitely as it relates to marriage. For so many years, the belief was that marriage was between one man and one woman. Now that has changed so that we have two men marrying, two women marrying. So our concept of what is a marriage or union has changed. For people who are traditionalists, who are looking for that one man, that Mr. Right, it has become a major search, and you hear so many people say that they don't have time to date. I don't quite understand that. What do you mean you don't have time to date? If you are someone who doesn't have time to sit down with someone, say maybe go out to a restaurant, or maybe just sit in a park, or go to some event, or maybe even cook a meal at home and invite the person over, just to sit down and talk to someone, get to know someone. If you are that busy that you don't have time to do that, then maybe you need to, reevaluate your priorities. Because making money is great. But when you're sitting home alone, waiting for the phone to ring, that money don't mean that much, does it? So I just think that I just find it interesting, rather, that people say they don't have time to date. And I get it. I think that a lot of people are just impatient, that, you want to go out and find Mr. and Mrs. Right on the first try. That does happen, but I think it happens rarely nowadays. I think a lot of times people end up spending a lot of time dating, trying to get to know someone. And now, of course, I'm speculating, but I think that people are impatient to some degree. They want to just find someone who matches um, the things that they're interested in, their likes, their dislikes. So they want to turn to places like the internet. But again, it's more than just um, what your priorities are, what your values are. There's got to be something that clicks with that other person. Some people call it a spark. There's got to be some kind of meeting of the minds. There's got to be some sort of raw attraction. And I think that when it comes to raw attraction, I think that that's something that is missing. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of women have said things like, men don't know how to be men anymore. Um, I will not disagree with that. Right. So much about us has changed over the years. For those of my generation, those born in the 60s, we had role models, male role models, who we patterned ourselves after. We had a dad in the house and we watched how dad took care of the home, took care of mother, took care of the children. We saw the connection dad had to the community. And now we don't have that anymore. So a lot of young men are coming up not having a relationship with their biological father. In fact, not having a real close relationship with any male role model. So a lot of information is not transmitted. And when the information is not transmitted, yes, you get those young men, middle-aged men, or even older men who don't know exactly what it is to be a man. And a lot goes into it. It's not just being born a boy and growing up. Becoming a man is a process. And it's not an easy one. There's a lot of lessons to be learned before you can go out and say, I am a man. It takes preparation. And I think what a lot of women are looking for are those men who come into the relationship polished already, who know um, who know what it is to take care of a woman, who knows what it is to be a father, who knows the things to say and the things to do to make it all right when things aren't going so well. And I think that has been lost. It's sad, but it does appear that has been lost. And a lot of women are noticing that. A lot of women are seeing, some men who are more reliant upon them than the other way around. So you find a lot of women who've gone to college, um, got postgraduate degrees, who are professionals, and who start looking, and what they inevitably encounter is someone who may not have a college degree, someone who may not have a job, someone who may not be looking for a job. Now, look, that is a small minority, but it is a minority that has grown over the years. You know, for my generation and the generations before, you never heard of anything called a stay at home dad. If dad was at home, dad got laid off, dad got fired, dad is sick or something. But stay at home dad just didn't happen. Growing up on my block, every man on that block went to work. Some 9 to 5, some midnight shift, some afternoons, but they all went to work. They all came home with a paycheck. They all made sure that a roof was kept overhead and that food was on the table. Those type of men that may have been underappreciated to some degree then would be highly appreciated now, today, because there's so many women sitting at home who want to settle down, who want to be a wife, who want to be a mother, and who want to do so naturally. Well, for them, they're saying that, or the question is always asked, where are the men? And there's so many answers that, I could give, but that doesn't help the situation. And I think that a lot of women, and they're just not aggressive by nature. And you know what? I think that because of the roles males play or have played, men tend to be more aggressive. And a lot of women are looking for men who are going to make the first move. They're just going to maybe make eye contact with you to let you know that there is some interest, but don't expect them to come up, walk over to you, and ask for your phone number or to buy you a drink. Women, in some cases, tend to be more laid back and expect you, the man, to make the first move. Well, nowadays, things have changed drastically. Women nowadays routinely will send a drink over to a man, will go up and introduce themselves, will, give out a phone number or take his number. You know, I guess when you've been waiting for a number of years for Mr. Right and your, I guess your upbringing told you not to be aggressive, to lay back and let the man approach you. But I guess when you are out at, say, the club or the bar, and you're seeing women who are aggressive, going up to men and buying them a drink and leaving with that man, and you're going home, by yourself, things begin to change. Your whole approach may change, and now it's like, okay, next time I go out, I'm gonna buy. If I see somebody in the bar that I'm feeling, I'm gonna buy them a drink. I'm gonna go up. I'm gonna be the one to go up and introduce myself. And that, I guess that can work, but it's sort of a role reversal. And one thing that I hear women say very often is that in a relationship, they have to be the man and the woman. They can't just be mom, can't just be wife or girlfriend. You have to be so much more because of, I guess, the change in roles. Again, my generation, generations before, no such thing as a stay-at-home dad. Today, it is common practice to find men at home raising the children while the wife is off at the office or whatever field of endeavor she's in. She's at work. He's at home with the kids. Um, Personally, that couldn't work for me. Not the way I was brought up, not my understanding of the role of a man. My understanding is that a man takes care of his family. You go out, you get a 9 to 5, a 10 to 6 over the midnights, whatever you got to do. You go out, you get a job or career, or you start your own business. You do something to make sure that roof is overhead, food is on the table, that your wife and your children have what they need. Might not have the best of everything, but you make sure that they have what they need. And I think that ideal, it's not as prevalent as it was, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. I can remember growing up in New York. When I turned 17, you were eligible to start taking city exams. Well, when that happened, I ran out. There was a newspaper in New York called The Chief. I would imagine still around. And it listed all of the city, state, and federal jobs, when they were coming out, when the test was coming out, and when you could apply and when you could take the test. So I would go get that Chief and I would go down scouring through the list of tests that were coming out, and I start checking them off, right? Okay, I'm taking this one in March, this one in April, this one in May, this one in June. Tests during that time were, between $10 and $15. Now it's a little bit different. You might just have to settle for test A and hope they call you, because now some of these tests are $100. So you might not want to end up spending hundreds of dollars to take tests, and you may not get called. But you find so many people, young people nowadays, that aren't as ambitious as we were. And realistically, I guess we just have the same level of ambition as our parents had. I guess it was different. My parents came up from the deep south, so for them, they had to start working at a very early age. 5, 6 years old, my mother was cooking. For my dad, he was out. You go out in the field with the family in the morning, and you pick cotton before you go to school. I think the requirement during that time was about 100 pounds of cotton that you would pick, for a day. So if you went out there before school, if you were a few pounds short or several pounds short, you come back home. If you could, you would do your homework and then right out to the field, and you'd be out there till it was dark. You had to make that quota of 100 pounds. Very few exceptions were made. Well, of course, they brought that work ethic up north with them. And, my dad was able to get a job driving for transit. My mother got a job working for Drake's Bakeries. And, that made us pretty comfortable growing up. But, for my parents' generation, it was very, very different to be able to go out and buy the car you wanted, to have the freedom to move about without worrying about signs on doors, white only. In New York, there were never those signs, at least not that I can recall. But there was a very subtle, but nonetheless destructive form of racism in New York City. But again, I don't want to get too far off the topic. Just talking about the changes in our perspective and our understanding and our roles as men and women, how much they've changed over the years, when now women feel as if they need to take responsibility for everything, for the relationship, for the children, also for the man. And unfortunately, those relationships don't seem to have very long lifespan. Initially, it may not seem like a problem to assist your man. Well, that's initially. Over time, if he isn't showing you where he's going to be productive, where he's going out earning a paycheck, in wintertime when it's 0 degrees and snow is piling up and you're getting up to go to work and he's rolling over, eventually that is going to be a problem. It is going to end that relationship. And, it may not happen overnight, but eventually that woman is going to say, enough is enough. I've invested enough and I haven't been getting anything back. So it's time that I move on. And I think that is, again, a problem across the board. So many women all walks of life and they're out there looking. And again, shrinking gene pool. So, in this country, we have an obsession with skin color, crazy obsession with skin color. So for years in this country, there were anti-miscegenation laws. Some of these laws, of course, would not allow Black and Caucasian to cohabitate. In fact, there was a family, the Loving family in Virginia, um, Caucasian man, black woman. They got married in the state of Virginia, had children, and were living their lives. Well, when it was discovered that they were married, well, the state basically told them, you can't stay here, you got to go. Not because you are some violent felon, not because you led an insurrection against your own government. No, your crime is you fell in love with a black woman. You married her and made a family with her. That's your crime. And because of that, the Lovings had to pack up everything they owned and move to Washington, D.C. They were never comfortable there. These were people who lived in rural areas their whole life. They just wanted to go home and be left alone. Took the Supreme Court a few years of fighting that case to get that law overturned or rescinded. Well, I say that to say that nowadays it is very, very common to see people of different ethnicities getting together. And that is because, yeah, we're dealing with a really depleted gene pool. So, where maybe you never considered dating someone of a darker skin tone, well, nowadays, that has changed. Nowadays, it is common to see people of different ethnicities strolling down the street together. And, you know, you you love who you love, you choose who you choose. And if that makes you happy, then well, be happy. And I just think that for a lot of women of color, I think what's going to happen is it is possible to see a lot more of that sort of style of dating where you have, Caucasian men dating black and brown women, Caucasian women dating black and brown men. I think that that is something we'll see a lot more of as the gene pool continues to be depleted. And, you know, right now, it seems as if we have those on the planet who, and I'm talking about these same people who want to reduce the world's population. Well, one of the ways that they want to do that is, of course, through war. And right now, it seems as if our president is kind of hell bent on war. You know, he keeps saying that we need to support um, President Zelensky of Ukraine. My question is why? Realistically, he can't win the war. So what are we doing? In Israel, we have a situation where um, Israel says they are at war with Hamas. That Hamas attacked in Israel on October 7th and took a number of hostages. Well, um, I know that Israel has probably the best um, surveillance um, on the planet. They probably have the best teams in terms of intelligence gathering on the planet. So, how is it all this took place, but nobody knows it? Supposedly, supposedly Hamas attacked on October 7th, and this was supposedly a surprise attack. Caught people at a concert and took hundreds hostage. But again, Israel, probably the best intelligence gathering apparatus on the planet. It is rare for Mossad to try to track someone down and be unable to. So They say they're at war with Hamas. I don't know, because the images I see, I don't really see a lot of Hamas fighters being shot down. I see a lot of children. I see a lot of women. I see a lot of innocent people. So we have people hell bent on profiting from war. Um, and apparently our current president is one of them. But again, that's kind of another story. I just want to highlight the fact that, nowadays, despite our hysteria with skin tone or skin color, I think we're just going to see a lot more people of various ethnic backgrounds getting together just out of necessity. And if you want to settle down and you want to have a child, okay, you might have choice A and B. Sometimes you got to jump down to choice C, right? Um, may not be what you envisioned yet, or the way you envision yourself getting married. May not be the person that you envision, but in the long run, it's the person that makes you happy. So I think that is important, that we not look at people um, and be judgmental because you know one is Caucasian, the other one's black, or one is Hispanic and the other one Caucasian or black. You know, we shouldn't be judgmental. We should understand that, just like so many people, women in particular, out looking. Well, these other women are out looking too, and maybe, just maybe, they have been a little more aggressive in their approach than you have. And if that's the case, what can you say? So, yeah, I was hoping to get some guys to call in and give some feedback, because I know guys, many will say that, no, that's just, that's imagined. There is no real shortage. But clearly something is wrong. Something is going on. And you have so many young men that just aren't attracted to women anymore. And, it's only going to make matters a lot worse. We did a show maybe a year or two ago, I guess right after the pandemic was officially cleared over. And Roman and I were talking about polygamy or polyandry. And at this point, it would definitely be viable. Something to consider, right? Because a lot of people say, well, you know what, I don't want somebody that's going to cheat on me. Well, you know what? You're going to know who the other person is because you're forming a union. And I know for us it's difficult, right? Because we've been taught that the American dream consists of, white picket fence, house with 3 or 4 bedrooms, a dog, and 2.1 children.
And the dog name is Fifi.
And the dog's name is Fifi. So, that's no longer America's version of what the dream is. It has changed dramatically. And whatever your version is of the American dream, you probably want to have somebody in that dream to share it with. And there's a lot of work that goes into, meeting someone, securing a relationship, and living happily ever after. That's hard to do, very difficult. Not impossible, but it won't be easy. Nothing in life that is good comes easily. It takes work. And, that's something that I think we should discuss at a later date, kind of piggybacking off of this and talking about once you're in a relationship, how do you stay in it? because it's so easy nowadays to just say, man, later for this, I'm out. I'm not trying to hear this, right? I'm out. A little bit of pressure, and the other person is ready to take off. And I think that it's good to have conversations like this sometimes, right? So we can talk about things like the pressure to perform, the pressure to the pressure to be right, the pressure to be, I guess, the head in a relationship. And that can be an issue when you're dealing with a woman who has always been the head. Now what? So I just think that that is a conversation for down the road, for those that do go out and are successful in meeting Mr. Right. Yeah, that's a conversation that we need to have, and just talk about, now that you're in a relationship, what do you do now? How do you maintain it? And there's a lot going on. So anyway, I just want to ask that question. I wanted to ask the fellas. Obviously, since I mentioned them on repeat, but I'd like to hear what they have to say. Um, because we we've heard what women have to say, right? But not so much from the fellas. What their take on this whole relationship shortage or shortage of men situation. Is it real? Is it imagined? And I think that um, I don't think it's imagined. I think this is real, and I think that unless things change drastically, I think that our numbers will become such that people will be fighting for survival. There's just so many things going on. And even while we talk about this, relationships, there's so many distractions going on in the world, and there's a particular reason why the governments of the world want to keep us distracted. Yeah. But, that's going to be pretty much what I wanted to say today. I was hoping that Romane might have been able to join us, if just briefly, to share her thoughts. Because, you always want a woman's input, right? Um, but, we can bring this up again. Ladies should be here, hopefully next week. And we can ask them that question. And, I'm pretty sure I know what they're going to say because this is nothing new. So many have said, they want to settle down and just can't find Mr. Right. Not even Mr. Right now. So, the question inevitably is, you know, who, make the introduction, who's who, right? Because it's so difficult to go out there and do it on your own. You can never be too careful. You don't know who you're meeting on a blind date. It could be on a CEO of a company, or it could be a mass murderer. You don't know. You can create a fake Facebook profile, and you might seem great, but of course, you can be whoever you want to be, in on the internet. But who are you really? So, yeah, that's just the question I had for today. Like I said, we're going to revisit that when the ladies are here, just to get some feedback from them and see what they think. Maybe we'll get some fellas on the line and get some feedback from them as well. Talk about, you know, their, you know, their, I guess, struggles to find, if that's the right word, the right person. Um, And I guess another topic that will have to come up, we probably have to talk about once you get into a relationship, and we did mention, how to stay in it. I think one of the big problems is now that women have become so successful in the workplace, how do you relinquish a little bit of power? And, that is a big one in many relationships. You say you want to be in a relationship with a man, you want a good man, you want a man who's going to be committed to you, and you have a whole list of things that you want, but the one thing he needs is for you to relinquish some of that power. You're just not willing to do it. So that's something that I think would be a good topic. It's something that should be talked about because a lot of people that may listen to Genesis Radio, some of them, are having some of these very issues, and they're trying to work through them. And sometimes you might hear something on the airwaves that will give you at least a little insight, some possible alternatives to just walking away and saying, yeah, we have 15 years or more invested, but, I'm not willing to work this anymore. Yes, I know we have children, we have a home, this, that, and the third, but I'm just not willing anymore. I've gotten so tired. But for, in those cases, right, there's probably still some hope. You get to a point where you're just not hearing one another anymore. You're not really talking. Now you're yelling and screaming, and there's really no communication, any real communication going back and forth, just like yelling and screaming, and just the opposite of communication. So that's something, we're going to also talk about in one of our upcoming shows. But, as of now, again, I just wanted to say, happy Father's Day to the fathers, those guys who are holding it down every day. And I know not a lot of credit is given to these guys anymore. But, I want to say happy Father's Day. Stay strong. And, we got your back, brothers. So y'all stay tuned. It's going to be another show coming on right after this. We got what's coming on tonight? Strategy. Your strategy's going to be here a little while, and he's going to play. He's going to spin some tunes and talk about some very important things. So y'all stay tuned. Listen, strategy, and listen. Check out all these shows on Genesis. Pretty much every day there's a new show with some new ideas. So listen in. There's a lot of information that's available. Things that are going on here in the community. Things going on around the country you might not be aware of. So keep your ears tuned in to Genesis, and we hope you have a good weekend. And again, a great Father's Day, and we'll see y'all next week.